My name's Ilka Blue, and I am a creative ecologist, which is addressing the cultural roots of ecocide or environmental destruction, trying to find creative ways of thinking and practice systems that can change that space to bring health back to our ecosystems. So I hunted for a way to describe what I do because people like to have labels and titles in a social system. And as an ecologist, we look at ecosystems, but say for example a vegetation ecologist would look at plants and biology in those systems, whereas a creative ecologist looks at the same spectrum but from the creative end of ecology. So I'm looking at patterns and systems just the same as someone that was working with plants would, but I'm looking at the social and cultural patterns and systems that fit within an ecosystem. So that's what a creative ecologist does. So the idea is that you want an ecology to be balanced and healthy and working as a system, a whole system, and that's what a health is. And so I look at it from a creative way, and I practice in a creative way, and I think about it in a creative way, and I use creative practice to address where those systems aren't in balance. That's what a creative ecologist does. I will often always refer back to an ecosystem, in the fact that within an ecosystem you have a whole lot of different functions and systems and roles, whether it's different species, but people are like that too. So I see art very much as the role of a translator that can shape shift between different disciplines, and that's kind of the role of a creative ecologist too, is like to get into that ecosystem and be creative about how you make those connections flow and work interdependently with each other. For me, I think mythology, I understand mythology, which is not storytelling in the sense of fairy tales or kind of, tales. Mythology in terms of like deep mythology, whether people might see that as religion or their dreaming or how they came into being. I understand mythology as the original sustainability text. That was created as a way for humans, culture, communities, to live within a bigger world, like the environment or a bigger ecosystem, more than human world, and to live within that space in balance as best as a culture can, because humans have a whole lot of things going on that kind of tip us out of balance, but mythology worked as a way to create governance and to create kind of lessons so that we knew how to live sustainably within the bigger world. One of the ideas is that over the last 800 years in the West, our mythologies have become non-existent, which is could be one of the causes of why we've spiraled out of control. So I just wanted to say one more thing about, which will piece it all together. So I look at storytelling as the main tool that humans have to adapt to a changing environment. So we are complex adaptive species scientifically, and complex adaptive species have something in their physiology or their way of being that they use to adapt when things change or the environment, heats up and you want to still survive. And for humans, our main tool is our induction process in our brain. We use pattern making for that, and our main way of doing pattern making is storytelling. It feeds back into mythology, and it also feeds into systems and pattern making, so you start to see how the whole thing fits together in that way. Mythology takes a couple of 100 years to seed, so we'll never see one in our lifetime, but I'm really interested in how I seed one. How can our generations seed something so that in a couple of 100 years we've actually got this kind of functioning mythology again? And I think a big part of it is the way we tell stories, and I think our stories need to be much more embedded in place and things that aren't human, so that we start developing again that respect for the other and have a sacredness around that. For me, it's that simple. I've thought about this actually, and I think time's got something to do with it. And time is key to sustainability. You don't have time, you don't have sustainability. Like they have such an interdependent relationship. Visually, we've been trained, we've learned how to do it. We can take in patterns, information so quickly we just like can scan stuff. That's what our predominant sense is today. Whereas when you have sound, you can't take in the whole picture. You have to let time unravel that for you. It teaches you how to listen and be with something. So you're not having this detached kind of like sensory download, like it's more like, like a stimulation, like I'm just going to drink in everything that my eyes can take, but you're not, you've already moved on to the next thing while your senses still drinking that thing. But with sound it's different. You're actually present with it. It's like a dance, it's two things happening simultaneously to make that connection, if that makes sense. I think that it's fundamental if you want to have a relationship with the other, and the other is anything that's not yourself. And we are in an I culture, so I think listening is paramount to learning how to relate. And for me, there are a few key things. Is remembering is key, and listening helps you remember. Like, how many people know how to hear a tree? Like, listen to what a tree has to say. It takes time to develop that relationship. So remembering, listening, and relationships are key to making the world more sustainable, if we want to use that word. And in terms of action, I don't know, I guess I'm changing. Like, I'm kind of, of course we have to be up the front, we have to be doing the action, because it's critical in terms of what we're losing in the context of habitat and species. But I can't emphasize enough the paradox of going slowly at the same time, because time affords sustainability, time affords listening, time affords practice. And there's this beautiful quote which is like, you need to practice your relationship with a person or a place or a way of being. It doesn't just happen, it's practice. It takes time. You've got to develop this stuff, learn about it, listen to it, understand how it works. We've forgotten how the world works, the natural systems, the patterns, and we're running around trying to work out what the solution is. And it's not a quick solution. It's about remembering, it's about listening, it's about coming back into relationship with those systems and those patterns, not trying to develop new ones to fix something that's disconnected. Connection takes time, practice, stillness, vulnerability, listening. It's kind of, For me, environment's first. That's where I go first. I'll start there before I start with humans. Because I think if you develop a relationship with the other, you've got a relationship with community. If I know how to relate to a tree, I know how to relate to a person. If I can sit with a river and listen to it, which is hard, I don't speak river language, but if I can sit there and learn how to do that, then I know how to sit with a person and listen to them. If I can understand how an ecosystem works with all its differentiation and all its diversity and all these crazy, mysterious things that are going on, then I can sit in a community and accept that that function works this way. We've forgotten that actually it's our biggest teacher. I practice in a kind of an interesting way, because it's never really, I don't practice in terms of these big projects that maybe some other people that you've interviewed do. I'm much more, stuff gets made in the moment. So I find myself in spaces, find myself with really interesting people. I wouldn't speak for other cultures, but what I would say is I've learned in those spaces that Western culture is very loud. It's very, very, very loud. And my learnings has been to be quiet, to listen, because you don't understand anything if you don't. So it's like, it's just shutting up and letting other cultures take the lead, and following and listening and observing and not being dominant, which we've been trained to be. We've been trained to be dominant. And so I learnt this actually with a good friend of Leah's and mine, Jo Tito, who among other things is a Maori woman, and we've done some collaborations with each other, and it was a big lesson. It was like, she's got a really strong culture, really, really strong. I don't have that same. I can't reach back and find songs and stories and practices the way that she can, because I don't have them. But I learnt in working with her collaboratively that what I need to do is I need to remember. I can't rely on other cultures for filling in those gaps. I need to remember my way back. And I remember my way back through listening, to place, through listening to trees, to water, to weather, to other creatures. That's how I remember. This is the eternal question that drives my entire life. I want to know the answer to that. I dream of humans being able to evolve. I think the one thing that gives me hope is the fact that I was born in Australia on Ngunnawal country, which is down at Canberra, and I feel really fortunate to be born on and to a country that has as its first people Aboriginal cultures, because they are a people that did live sustainably for a really long time, and had it totally sussed, totally sorted in so complex and so simple on every layer. And so that gives me hope that humans have the capability to do it. In terms of where we are now, I feel like we are running way down the wrong avenues. I think we're becoming too dependent on technology as a solution. I mean, it's a great tool, but humans have had tools forever. It's all relative to time and space. So it's to me much more about human behaviour and culture. Culture is paramount, and how people love themselves, each other, their land. And that isn't very functional at the moment. We're seeing, we're seeing lots of changes, and that's great. But in terms of the scale of what we need to happen, I am deeply troubled and sad that we are losing strains of evolution in terms of species and habitat. That's just wrong. Not only are they gone forever, and I can't even quantify what that means, it's too big to behold that, but it's like we're just allowing that to happen. Like I heard on the news, this blue finch has just become extinct today, and in other news, someone was driving down the road and it's like, wow, we've just lost a whole strain of evolution. Like, how long does it take for a bird to develop its wings and its colours and its flight pattern and the way it nests? It was an individual species and it's gone. And now, I don't know, there's a lot, we're going totally in the wrong direction. Imagine the world if we all just slowed down and we listened. Like, imagine that. It would change a lot of things. That's what I think we need to do. It's about paradox and complexity. And as humans, we have dumbed down, like the West, I'll speak for my culture, has dumbed down so much. And we need to learn complexity again and paradox. It's both things at the same time. This is the beauty of quantum physics. This is systems thinking. This is, this is where transdisciplinarity, where stuff really starts to get exciting. And for me, that's the most exciting space I've found so far, where there's actually, like, you start finding languages and patterns and systems where you're like, yeah, this is the way the world works. Maybe people can catch on to that. Yeah, and it kind of sits in a space where I think people accept it, whereas other things might be a little bit too alternate or a bit out there, whereas quantum physics is kind of still within the house of science, so it's accepted.
Yeah, it's not like deep ecology where it's like a more spiritual thing. Mm-hmm. This is like something that's...
But it's interesting because quantum physics, transdisciplinarity does talk about the sacred. Mm. So you start getting these threads are coming in, and it's much more holistic. And it starts looking at the way, actually, a deeper rhythm of the world, rather than this dualistic binary rhythm, which we've been locked in for so long, and it doesn't serve us anymore. So that's the stuff that I find exciting, and that's where I personally look to and would work in that space for change and evolution. But I'm talking big picture evolution, humanity like really leaping out of where we are into a space where we know how to exist in balance with the other, not just ourselves.
Definitely.
And I don't see technology does that. I think technology just further allows us more of a mirror of how beautiful we are. No, I don't think so. I don't know. Just looking at this beautiful tree over here. They're one of my favourites, the paperbarks tea tree. I guess they're the best teachers of all, really. That's where I'd go to get the answers. To the trees.